Hello everyone, this is the finale of What If Naruto Was Madara's Brother, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. It was dark. The thundering clouds roared from the skies, the angry sparks of lightning often falling on barren land, scarring it even more. The ghostly winds howled wildly, echoing the lost voices of all the souls who were forgotten. The world was on top of a lonely mountain. 5 shadows lurked in the darkness, observing the massive camp sprawled across the decaying lands. The sun had deserted this world, and so had the stars. Even the moon was swallowed by the clouds, leaving this world in eternal darkness. Whoever had lived in these lands had long since passed, and one touch at the soil was enough to make one understand that the end of this world was near. Look at the size of their camp, whispered the first man. All 5 of them were garbed in dark swirling shadows that covered them from end to the legs. It was a gift bestowed upon them to help them accomplish the duty. Their faces always hidden behind demonic masks provided to them by their master. They were ghosts. How many of them are there? Asked the second man, his voice as stoic as ever despite what his eyes showed him. 300,000, perhaps. Brother, whispered the third one worriedly, earning a sharp look from the previous man. I told you not to call me that, fool. Not out here, hissed the white-haired man, his demonic mask thankfully hiding most of his furious expression, much to the relief of the younger man beside him. Thankfully, the other 2 black-haired comrades of theirs didn't care enough to get involved. But the one who had stayed silent so far did the opposite. It's been 16 years, Tobirama. The said man removed his mask, leading to their other comrades doing the same. In the end, their blonde-haired leader cast aside his own mask, revealing his perfectly bearded face and sharp eyes. Even if one looked at him closely, they would find it hard to recognize him as Naruto Uchiha, the young dragon. He was nothing but a ghost now, just like the rest of them. Tobirama glared at his younger brother, Atama, who had the grace to blush at his mistake. Kagami and Takeshi Uchiha grinned at the banter, which earned a faint smile from the deceased king, even as they all watched the grave threat in front of them. I often forget who we were. It's good to remember, even if only for a little while, whispered the king wistfully. It took us so long to follow the clues. So many planets, so many barren worlds, and now we finally see what's coming for our people, said Takeshi bitterly. Tobirama frowned at the anger in the Uchiha's voice. Even in death, Takeshi was a hot-headed soul. But for all his faults, Tobirama admired the man's loyalty to his friend and king. Takeshi and Kagami chose to linger on, to keep on fighting and risking their very existence getting destroyed, to keep aiding their king in the final war. Tobirama had made the opposite choice and had been about to ascend to the next life when he learned about Atama's decision to follow Naruto in his mission to stop the Otsutsuki. Truthfully, Tobirama thought they had done enough, even giving their lives for mankind. But now, after so many years of witnessing the destruction the Otsutsuki had left across the universe, of the scale of destruction and tragedy they had left behind, and witnessing the true power before his very eyes, he had made the correct decision to protect his younger brother and aid his king in this mission. What do we do? Asked Kagami curiously. The people need to know, answered Naruto honestly. We have constantly left behind messages about the Otsutsuki's movements. It may take a year or 2 for those messages to reach our world, but it should give our people ample time to prepare, suggested Atama, but Naruto shook his head. We cannot depend on that. Now that we know the Otsutsuki's strength, we need to prepare them ourselves before it's too late. Atama and Takeshi, called the king. The 2 warriors straightened up on hearing the iron-clad voice of their king. Atama, contact the Senjus and their allies. Takeshi, do the same with the Uchiha and their bannermen. We cannot leave anything to chance. Make sure our people are ready, and I, Tobirama and Kagami shall do everything in our power to buy them as much of that precious time as we can, ordered the king. None of his 4 comrades objected and only gave him grave but determined nods in return. King Naruto stared at the army before him. He had seen what kind of devastation they left behind on each world, he had seen the terrifying power these Otsutsuki had. Hinata had been right about that at least. The Otsutsuki of Earth were a pale imitation of the ones before him. And there were so many of them. Yet he had witnessed the way they fought, the way they waged war, the way they butchered their enemies. It took him 16 years, but he never gave up. He and his comrades trailed after them like ghosts, observing them from afar and never made contact no matter what. I cannot even remember home anymore. My wife and children, he thought sadly, as all he could remember were her blonde hair and dazzling smile along with 3 loud crying babies. He looked at his comrades and just like him they were torn as they tried to remember the home they had fought for so long, the people for whom they had forsaken a chance to move on for. None of them could remember the things most important to them, but they very well remembered the massive S they had witnessed for so many years across the universe. They were ghosts. He watched as Atama and Takeshi got up, giving him firm salutes as his eye opened up a space-time dimension that would take them back home. Considering how far they were, it would take them another 3 years to reach Earth. He glanced at his remaining 2 comrades with a determined gaze. We delay their advance, he decided, as he lifted a dark black-colored sword that was capable enough of living and even the S. A gift from death itself. Won't be easy, warned Kagami, but nonetheless he too lifted a similar sword and prepared himself. 3 ghosts against 300,000 or more. We stand alone, Naruto, said Tobirama frankly, never mincing any words, but was surprised when a faint smile came across the fallen king's face. Not alone. Naruto bit his thumb, breaking frozen bee out of his S-skin and placed them upon a skeleton tattoo on his left arm. It's time. Tobirama and Kagami were both surprised when another space-time dimension opened around them. At first nothing happened, but then a massive wave came forth until so many corporeal forms were standing in front of them. Most of them were humans, but majority of them had their faces covered in black masks. Cursed souls, destined to do the Shinigami's bidding. But there were more than a few hundred humans with white masks covering their faces. Pure souls, that had voluntarily chosen to fight this war. Tobirama took great satisfaction when he saw quite a few of the dark souls had pale white eyes. The only thing that gave their idini away is the Otsutsuki that were butchered in the last war. It gave the Senju immense pleasure to see those vermin being punished in this way. There were others in the army as well. Summoning creatures of all sorts, and one of them stood out from the rest. The pitch-black dragon lowered itself, allowing its master to take up position on top. Tobirama grinned and Kagami smiled when the king looked at them with a fierce gaze. For mankind, Hashirama waited at the gates of the capital alongside a large retinue which included most of his family and even the royal family. They were patiently waiting for the man to arrive. The most excited among the group were none other than Naori and Hikari. After all, their adoptive father was about to arrive. He was brought out of his thoughts when he felt the mass of chakra signatures emerging from the forest. Hundreds of Northmen came charging forth, all wearing traditional armor of many well-known clans. Hashirama instantly spotted the Shimura warriors, alongside many Aburame, but most numerous of them were the Uchiha. It still astonished him that Tsunde's decision to split off the clans across the elemental nations had worked so well. His sister had done well in bestowing the Land of Lightning to the Uchiha clan and their bannermen. Truth be told, it was a wise decision as their firm ideology and iron fist had made peace prevail in those lands. A tactic that would have not worked in the gentle and more liberal Land of Fire, something which the Senjus and their allies were easily able to manage. The new arrivals were not alone, as the Sarutobi from the Land of Earth marched alongside them, so did the Naras from the Land of Wind. Even Uzumaki from the Land of Whirlpool and Samurai from the Land of Water were marching towards the gates. Even a small party from the Dragonlands, the seat of the prince, was approaching. Prince Naruto smiled on seeing his best friend leading the small group. Sasuke Uchiha, son of Shisui and Mikoto Uchiha, grinned as he was the first to reach the gates and was quickly engulfed by the prince in a fierce brotherly hug. The fact that the boy looked quite similar to Madara's deceased little brother Izuna only reminded Hashirama of the hope they had instilled in their world. Finally, the skies darkened and Hashirama smirked as he arrived. People gasped when the familiar visage of the demonic bull-headed Susanoo graced the capital once more. Madara Uchiha had not lost any of his dangerous aura, even if most of his days were spent maintaining order across the Land of Lightning as its ruling lord. Prince Naruto again smiled as the Susanoo landed, and 2 people emerged. One was his grim-faced dear uncle and the other was one of his dearest cousins. Izuna Uchiha, son of Madara Uchiha, was 3 years younger than his cousin. He was wearing black armor that matched his dark hair and eyes, his skin pale like most of his clansmen, and like his father he too held a gun by at his back. Only the gods knew which woman had given Madara a son, as the man himself never revealed that secret to anyone including his own family. Hashirama watched Prince Naruto and Izuna approach each other before the older brother sized up the younger one with a smirk. "You're still in black," teased Naruto. Hashirama didn't miss the fleeting look of sorrow that passed Madara's eyes on hearing those words before he reined in his emotions and watched his own son shrug. "Still better than yours," answered Izuna with a grin. Tsunade smiled on watching her son hug his favorite cousin even as Madara and Hashirama did the same, albeit more quickly in order to not gather any more attention. She waited another few minutes, exchanging respectful greetings made to her by various lords, including Hiruzen Sarutobi, who was the new leader of the Land of Earth. The same greetings were extended to her by a smiling Nagato Uzumaki, and old Mifune, while Shikaku Nara, son of Dane Nara and new leader of Land of Wind, gave her a lazy bow. Tsunade presided over the formal meeting and watched every person present in the room. Most of them were men and women she had known her entire life, but there were many new faces as well. They were so young, but in them she saw hope for the future. It made her bitterly understand and remember why her husband himself. Looking at these young children, the future leaders of their world, she could only pray they never saw the horrors that their parents did and could build upon the legacy their ancestors left behind. She had tried her best to rebuild their world from ashes, knowing Naruto would have wanted her to look after their people. She was lucky to some extent, since the world was ravaged by war and destruction. Most people were desperate to rebuild their lives and ready to rally behind any who provided that stability. The Uchiha Senju alliance was their best hope, so the world followed the two clans with hope in their hearts. It took nearly a decade to repair the damage left behind by the Otsutsuki, and even so the world still had many scars from the last war. Only now their economy was getting back on its feet. Human population, which had been was now slowly growing again. People were finally able to find some luxury in their lives after years of scarcity in terms of resources. Most of all, the people were still in the process of accepting the destruction the last war had wreaked on them. Many ninja clans had gone extinct, even the Uchiha and Senju had reached the point of annihilation. It was why she had encouraged humanity to have more children. It would not only help them regain their lost numbers, but also make them capable enough to face any threats, and in a way these children had brought a new light in the lives of Tsunade's generation that had known nothing but war and misery. It had healed some of the pain they felt for all they had lost. She looked at her own son and felt pride along with sadness sweep her heart. Naruto was sitting beside her and was carefully interacting with Hiruzen and Nagato. Watching him laugh at something Hiruzen said brought a smile on her face. But it also made her worried about her only child. He was a good boy, if a little strange at times, just like his father. She had never imagined her son inheriting so much of his father's looks or live his life on few of the principles which her husband had lived and by. He had displayed those traits very directly when he ignored her pleadings and had marched to war a few years ago against the rebels. Just like King Naruto, his son who bore the same name couldn't sit back and watch threats being made against his people. Her son had ignored the advice of his eldest stepsister as well. Princess Naori was good at war and had displayed her skill quite a few times during the rebellion war. She had advised her only brother to not lead from the front at the risk of his own life, and the girl had been right. Naruto was the only heir to the throne. He carried both Uchiha and Senju in him, a part of both families that indirectly also earned him the loyalty of the bannermen of both great clans. It was that power that had kept the world at peace. If something happened to him, then that alliance would shatter. Tsunade had to remind herself that the only way the war between those two clans had been stopped was through her marriage to King Naruto. It was why she had to keep her son safe for as long as she lived, not just as his mother but also as Queen of the Seven Nations. Lord Madara, may I ask as to why you called for this meeting? Asked Shikaku Nara, bringing Tsunade out of her thoughts and glance at her quiet brother-in-law. The years had changed the eldest son of Tajima Uchiha. Tsunade could not help but sympathize with the veteran Uchiha who had lived an even tougher life than hers and many other people in the room. He lost 3 brothers during the clan's wars era, witnessed the demise of his 4th and last brother along with most of his clan during the Otsutsuki War, was left alone with the responsibility of leading the Uchiha and their bannermen when Lord Tajima a year later after the end of the Otsutsuki War swallowed by grief over the death of his sons, his sister and most of his clan. She had felt extremely guilty of handing over the control of the Land of Lightning to Madara when he was at his lowest. She had feared he would lash at her out for trying to throw his remaining people and bannermen from the Land of Fire which had always been their home. But to her surprise, Madara had seen reason and had accepted her decision and went north. He untied those lands and its people, helped them rebuild their lives along with repopulating the Uchiha clan by having a son of his own and encouraging others to do the same. Madara had been the first to answer the call when Prince Naruto had called his banners against the rebels and had made sure the young boy and his sisters returned from the war alive. In a way, Tsunade guessed Madara was desperate not to lose the last legacy of his beloved brother. Her decision to split off the most powerful clans across the world had worked much to her surprise. But then again, she had only given command of various nations to only the most loyal clans. It would be up to her son and his descendants of future to make sure they remained loyal every generation. It would not be an easy task, but it was the best solution she could come up with at that time all those years ago. The Land of Lightning, the northernmost nation of the world, was ruled by the Uchiha with the support of their bannermen. It was the second largest nation after the Land of Fire and was the military powerhouse of humanity. Some of their finest warriors had emerged from that nation under Madara's command. The Land of Earth, ruled by the Sarutobi clan, was rich in minerals and resources. That had proved extremely beneficial for the growth of humanity. The Sarutobi were men of honor and strength, something which the people of Land of Earth respected. They ruled those lands with the support of minor ninja clans and had a decent industry and military force. The Land of Wind was a different story. Lacking most critical resources and military strength, it was the weakest among all nations. Its people lived a tough life and were the most dangerous. It was why she had tasked the Nara clan to rule those lands. Their intelligence and cunning had kept the most problematic enemies at bay, but even then the rebellion had started from those lands. Thankfully, the other nations had understood the plight of the Naras, and when Prince Naruto called his banners for their aid, the full might of the other 6 nations descended upon the rebel forces, crushing them completely. The Nara clan was doing well in rebuilding the nation after that conflict, but tensions were still high there. The Land of Fire was the wealthiest and most prosperous among all nations. It was not just the breadbasket of the world with its rich fertile lands, but also contained the most precious of resources in forms of gold, diamonds, and even iron. The Senjus ruled most of the nation with the support of their bannermen, and only the capital along with its surrounding lands were ruled by the royal family. Hashirama had maintained the peace and helped his people prosper. The population of this nation was the highest along with its economy, which was why it had the largest military force in the world. The Land of Water, previously home to the now deceased Otsutsuki clan and their allies, had long been shrouded in misery. But when Tsunade gave those lands to the samurai and Hanzo's followers, it finally brought peace to those lands. While not as prosperous as the Land of Fire or military strong like the Land of Lightning and Earth, the Land of Water was stable enough with a growing economy and a decent army of honor-bound samurai. The Land of Whirlpools, ruled by the Uzumaki, was also a prosperous and wealthy nation. The Uzumaki clan had rebuilt their lands with vigor and determination, and their lands were considered to be the home of some of the most intellectual people of the world. The Uzumaki clan had developed the world in leaps with their military as well as civilian innovations. It had earned them great wealth and fame, along with envy. But for now, they were stable, and while not a powerhouse in terms of military power, they were still important for growth and peace across the world. The Dragonlands was the smallest among all nations. They were a group of 50 large and small islands off the coast of the Land of Fire and Water. While not as prosperous as other nations, it was home to the largest naval and merchant fleets of the world. It was under the direct rule of the royal family and seat of the crown prince. Those islands were thankfully able to sustain themselves, and their trade fleets had provided very valuable services to various nations. It had earned quite a lot of wealth for Tsunade and her son, while their naval fleet had proven quite helpful during the rebellion by providing crucial logistical support while also transporting warriors from far-off nations like the Land of Water. Somehow, these 7 nations had helped humanity find its feet again after the Otsutsuki War and given them all the stability and peace they desperately needed. But Tsunade also remembered that peace was fragile and fleeting. One wrong move could ignite the sparks of war once more. Most of humanity considered her to be one of the most intelligent rulers in history, but in truth she had only used a page from her deceased husband's war strategies. She had been by Naruto's side when he delegated command to various officers and family members during the war. He had always chosen the most loyal ones to lead while always delegating the most intelligent or cunning ones in advisory positions. A clear example of that fact was him choosing Madara to lead half of his army during the Otsutsuki War, while delegating secondary command to a shrewd Tobirama Senju. Tsunade had mimicked her husband's decisions and chosen the most loyal lords to rule and keep peace across the world. But she always stayed vigilant, keeping careful eye on all of them including the Senju clan, for the hearts of men were always uncertain. She had not tried to micromanage any of the nations apart from the Dragonlands, which was under her direct rule. She had allowed her loyal lords to rule their lands with their own philosophy while providing aid when required. It had earned her the respect and loyalty of the lords sitting in this room, while making her extremely beloved to the common population, for it was due to her decisions that they got peace. She could only hope her son could keep this peace after she was gone, but she planned to help him be ready for his responsibility. 3 years ago, the Uchiha clan received a message that unexplainably was etched into one of our holy shrines, said Madara hesitantly, as if the very words were still alien to him. What did the message say? Asked Hiruzen Sarutobi, echoing everyone's thoughts. They are coming. The room froze. Tsunade herself controlled her emotions while gauging those of the other lords and their children. Most seemed shocked, some younger clan heirs even disbelieving. Even her own son seemed skeptical of his uncle's claims, something he never often did. It could be a hoax, Lord Madara. Even the Otsutsuki records we found in the Land of Water estimated the one true enemy's arrival at least a few more decades later, argued Shikaku Nara defensively, but Tsunade already saw the gears churning in the sharp man's mind. Madara nodded, if a bit reluctantly, his grim mood becoming even more darker. An expression mirrored by his own son. At first, I thought so. Someone's poor attempt to plunge our world back into the flames of war, but a few months later another message appeared. This one providing images of a world that is not ours, said Madara hesitantly. His son, Izuna, got up from his seat and distributed a few pictures across the room. When Tsunade received a copy, she had to again control her emotions. Before her was the image of a snowy world ruined by war. Even from this brief picture she could see the lands were devastated to the point of beyond return. The very earth itself was alongside the corpses of strange little bug-like creatures that were never before seen on Earth. Another picture was passed to her, and this one took her breath away. 5 shadows in the shape of humans were present on the very same destroyed snowy world. Their faces and be hidden by masks and shadow-like cloaks, but she felt her heart stop on seeing one of them having blonde hair and another with pale white hair. Her gaze caught Madara, followed by Hashirama's and then her own son, all of whom were shocked. Few of them look very similar, Madara, said Hashirama hopefully. I didn't want to believe it at first, but another message came a year later, and this time it had information about the numbers in the enemy's vanguard, their battle tactics, and along with some of their strengths. It's beyond anything the majority of our ninjas can handle, confessed Madara, as he handed off the last images in his possession. It carried a last message as well. They come. We shall do what we can, for as long as we can, to buy you time. Unite and face them, or mankind shall perish like the inhabitants of destroyed worlds across the universe. By now, the room had gone deathly silent. If this is true, whispered Hiruzen, a small hint of fear creeping into his voice. Then I am hard-pressed to consider this to be true, as the technology of photography is still being perfected by my clan and would take another year before we can pass it on the world. Either our supposed allies stole this technology and are helping us out, or this is another rebel faction looking to create discontent and anarchy, explained Nagato, much to the distress of the other ninja leaders. Madara, is this who I think it is? Asked Tsunade hesitantly, her gaze still affixed on the blonde man and the one with white hair. Even the one with brown hair seemed to hit something in her heart. King Naruto was the only one in our world with the ability to move across time and space. I can think of no one other than my brother with the power and will to do what is right for his people. Even after death, answered Madara, pride easily present in his voice along with sadness and hope. This man beside the king looks like Tobirama, And this one like Itama, proposed Hashirama, a smiling etching across his face. The other two seem like Kagami and Takeshi. But we cannot be sure, whispered Mikoto in surprise, earning a nod from her husband Shisui as well. I don't think any of this is true. These men are and we have never tried something horrible like the Otsutsuki had done to bring them back. The samurai are of the belief that this is the evil desire of chaotic shinobi wishing to start another war by playing at our feelings. I must say they are pretty smart as they are hitting you all where it hurts most, family, warned Mifune, earning a nod from Hanzo as well. That seemed to dampen the spirits of most people in the room, as hard rationality and reality threatened to crush the faint hopes once more. It is true, my queen. Our world is not ready for war and the civilians will revolt against us if we threaten their peace with another conflict. The memory of the rebellion is still fresh in many hearts and might just erupt into an inferno if we make hasty decisions, warned Shikaku Nara. Tsunade was about to argue when her son slowly got up from his seat, attracting everyone's gaze. He looked at her for permission and she saw the keen desire to take charge of this situation. She hesitated, wondering if it was the right choice, but in the end consented because if this information was true then Naruto would have to lead their race just as his father had in the last war, who still fought for their well-being even after death. You're right, Lord Shikaku and Lord Mifune. Our peace is too fragile and our subjects too hesitant for another war. In that sense, I can understand not making any hasty decisions, said Prince Naruto, his voice every bit like his father's had been. Madara seemed disappointed and was about to protest when his nephew looked directly at him. But we also cannot dismiss this threat lightly. We all know that the Otsutsuki shall come to destroy our world, it may be now or a few decades later, but every evidence we have shows one harsh truth. They are coming, argued Prince Naruto, earning a grim nod from Madara and his son. Even Hashirama relented after a few long moments. Then what do you want us to do, my prince? Questioned Hiruzen seriously. Call the banners. Shocked gasps escaped across the room, Suin's among them. Only Madara grinned with barely hidden pride visible across his grim face. All of them? Asked a distressed Shikaku Nara, already imagining the backlash this would cause across the ever unstable land of wind. No, that would be too risky. Start with preparing your own individual clansmen first. If we discover more merit to this threat, only then we can escalate this to a full-scale crisis. A small military build-up would not raise much questions considering the memories of the rebellion is still fresh in many minds. We should also prepare our economy for war. With winter coming we can justify this as a preventive action in stopping scarcity of food, water and critical resources. In the meanwhile, I shall form a small elite force that would investigate this threat. I would request all of your support by providing me the finest men and women from your families. Tsunade was stunned. She watched many faces across the room and she was not alone in her feelings. Madara and Hashirama seemed proud of their nephew, so was Hiruzen and Sarutobi, for they were men who understood war better than others in the room. Meanwhile, Lord Shikaku, Lord Nagato and Lord Mifune seemed conflicted, already imagining the ramifications behind this move. In this moment, she could clearly see her son had inherited both hers and his father's traits. He led from the front but also had an understanding of human hearts and minds, characteristics passed on by his mother and father. But, just because he was thinking on the right path didn't mean that others would agree with his judgment. People had followed King Naruto because their very existence was threatened. Now, having endured a long peace, few were opposed to going back to the old days of war. I'm sorry to say this, but you're being too hasty, my prince. The samurai do not agree with this decision. I cannot in good conscience allow my people to be a part of this, replied Mifune flatly, making Tsunade clench her fists and many eyes to harden for the open defiance. To everyone's surprise, Prince Naruto smiled. A cold and ruthless smile. That is your right, Lord Mifune. But if war truly comes to our world, then I will not raise a single sword in the defense of the land of water. Nor can I continue to allow the subsidies the crown has granted your people over the years any longer, considering you are not inclined to defend your fellow men, said Prince Naruto coldly, hard eyes remaining steady even as the furious and cold gaze of the samurai leader gazed upon him. We served your father, boy. The subsidies you grant us are not out of the goodness of your heart but because your mother took the ancestral lands of my people and ordered us to populate the land of water. We served your father, and then your mother loyally without question. Is this how you reward loyalty? asked Mifune fiercely. Naruto clenched his jaw and was about to give a befitting reply, but his eldest sister see him off. My father always believed that the samurai were honorable, more loyal, said Naori pointedly. Madara smiled at his niece's harsh words struck Mifune deeply. For all their faults, the samurai were a proud people. Having raised the girl and her sister, he knew Naori may have inherited Naruto's mind for war, but in many ways her temperament was just like Madara's. The same could not be said of her younger sister, who was of a more gentle heart, a fact she displayed as she looked at Mifune with hopeful look that could have melted even the most hardened men. My brother does not wish war upon your people, but only the samurai and shinobi together were able to stop Hinata Otsutsuki. The way we think are different, but in the end we are all human. We must stay united, Lord Mifune, urged Hikari gently. Mifune glanced at the other lords and saw most didn't agree with him but the prince. A few like Shikaku who had doubts were smart enough to keep the doubts to themselves. He then looked at Hanzo, and his old friend gave him a careful nod which made Mifune sigh. The samurai have followed the crown loyally for years. We will not break faith today, declared Mifune reluctantly, but made sure to intently stare at the prince, making sure to let the boy know that he would be held personally responsible and suffer repercussions if he dragged the samurai into a needless conflict. Thankfully, the boy gave a curt but respectful nod in return, which was much better than giving false promises which he couldn't keep. Northern families are loyal, Naruto. They'll fight for you if you want, promised Madara, earning a wide smile from his nephew. So shall the South and all its families, promised Hashirama fiercely, earning a grateful nod from Tsunade. The land of Earth stands behind you, my prince, pledged Hiruzen honestly. Troublesome, I don't like it but needs to be done. I'll rally what support I can from my troublesome lands, just don't be too hasty, my prince, said Shikaku hesitantly, earning chuckles from many in the room including the prince. I don't need to say this but the Dragonlands shall stand behind you, promised Sasuke Uchiha with a smirk, earning a smile from his mother Mikoto and a tired sigh from his father Shisui at the boy's dramatic and informal pledge. All eyes turned upon Nagato Uzumaki, who gave a faint smile to the prince. You remind me of your father, my prince. In many ways you are like him, but I see some of your mother in you as well. We are kin by B, and the Uzumaki owe your father a debt we can never repay. We shall support our family like we always have, promised Nagato with a smile. Tsunade watched her only son with pride and fear in her heart as he gave a respectful nod to all those who had supported his decisions. Her heart nearly broke when Izuna Uchiha got up from his seat. It was no secret the boy admired his cousin and made no secret of the fact when he raised his own sword and yelled the la that brought happy and painful memories in Tsunade's heart. The young dragon. Soon enough, the hall was filled by enthusiastic cheers for the prince and his nickname. Most of the praises came from his own generation, who for all their effort couldn't hide the fact that they saw a chance to step outside of their parents' shadow and earn glory for themselves by following the prince. While Tsunade and her generation could not be so cheerful, as unlike their children they had seen war, and there was no glory in it. Only pain and heartbreak, one which most of the older generation felt clearly when they saw a boy so similar in mind and appearance as their fallen king be accepted as the leader of the next generation. They all could still remember the day, all those years ago, when they proclaimed another man by the same law, and one fact became very clear to their generation. Wars may start and kings may rise and fall, but the young dragon shall live on forever in the hearts of those who yearn for freedom. Madara watched his son, nephew and nieces having a good time alongside children of other ninja lords in the royal gardens. A sight that evoked a smile from his dear friend Hashirama and a worried glance from Tsunade. He's just a boy. They all are, chastised Tsunade. Madara grunted in disapproval while staring at his sister by law seriously. There were many things she was better at than him, most impressively in keeping the prickly and nervous ninja lords united. Not to mention the civilians loved her and she was a shinobi at that. But this was something where she was wrong. They won't be boys forever. It's better they grow up now than in the flames of war, like we all did, rebuked Madara, earning a tired sigh from Hashirama. That is not what we wanted for our children, Madara. We fought and so hard to give them a peaceful future, not more wars to fight and in, said Hashirama bitterly. Both Senjus were disappointed when Madara remained unmoved and stared back at them without backing down, reminding them of the Uchiha stubbornness they had sometimes forgotten due to how far their people lived from each other now. Do you really think he's out there? Asked Tsunade, the hope in her voice not missed by Madara and her brother. I don't have any definite proof, but I believe my brother is too stubborn and honorable to risk his people's fate when he can do something. Those who follow him are of the same heart, including your brothers. I respect them all for their strength, and I hope one day I can see them again. In life or death, whispered Madara earnestly. So do I, agreed Hashirama, earning a silent nod from his sister as well. Madara glanced at his nephew currently laughing alongside his son. While his own mother and uncle didn't think him to be strong enough, Madara knew the boy was his father's son, and provided the right guidance he would rise up to the responsibility of leading mankind once more. I couldn't protect my brothers, but I will protect them. Even if it costs me everything, promised Madara fiercely. Hashirama was pleased to see the promise Madara had made was not just by looking at his own family but the Senju children and the other clan children as well. The Uchiha Lord was a strong man and sometimes difficult to understand, but he was the best friend Hashirama had ever known. A man who always spoke harsh but honest words. It was why the two Senju siblings couldn't help but reluctantly agree to the Uchiha's next words. There's a war coming. I don't know how soon, but it is coming, said Madara with a feral grin that sent shivers down the Senju's hearts as they saw the old warrior flare back to life. It's not a matter of smiling, Madara, rebuked Tsunade, and saw her own brother agreed with her sentiment, not that it mattered to the Uchiha who clenched his fist. How are the Biju? He asked seriously, looking directly into Hashirama's eyes intently. Hashirama sighed. All of them have reformed again. The Kyuubi has so far managed to keep them calm and isolated in the mountains of my lands, but it would be best if they are not called for aid until necessary. Many people still resent them for the destruction and death they caused to humanity in the Otsutsuki War. Even if it was against their will, it doesn't matter, for humans are a vengeful race, warned Hashirama, earning a grunt from his best friend. I don't trust them, but my brother did. The fox promised my brother that he would come to the aid of his son and his descendants when the Otsutsuki clan truly arrived for war. I hope the beast is honest in keeping its promises, or else I'll drag all 9 of them kicking and screaming out of whatever caves they are hiding in, warned Madara, voice grave and dark, which made Tsunade shiver. Fortunately, her brother knew how to deal with his friend better than her. Let's hope we don't reach that point. In the meantime, you need to keep King Naruto's Rinnegan safe. We will only use it in the direst of situations, cautioned Hashirama. It was not much of a promise, but for now it was enough to pacify Madara, who stared back at the vast land of fire around them. He had never been able to take his brother's eye, no matter how powerful that dojutsu was. Some even say it allowed a man to gaze into the future, but Madara had seen enough horrors to be content to live in the present. He only knew that if he had taken his brother's eye, he would have gone mad from grief seeing the world with his brother's eye and remembering how Naruto's life had been for the greater good. No, it didn't belong to him, and which was why he had kept it safe to pass on to his brother's son if he required it. He was even willing to limit the use of his own Mangekyo eyes, thereby evading blindness all these years. What was to say? He was a stubborn man. Still another war. We barely survived the last one, and not without severe losses. We might have rebuilt our world and our armies, but we are not at our best. The fighters of our forces are mostly young men and women led by a quarter of grizzled veteran of old wars. Many warriors chose to retire after the Otsutsuki War, many more after the rebellion. Only the most stubborn, and craziest have stayed on the path of a shinobi, warned Tsunade, earning a smirk from Madara. We'll fight with what we have. It's better to have a small group of lions at your side than a horde of sheep, rebuffed Madara nonchalantly, earning a sigh from his best friend. It's not worth the cost, Hashirama, his reluctance and sorrow visible for his friend and sister to witness. Madara steeled himself, ignoring the small bout of fear and hesitation in his own heart as he stared at the next generation, his world and all that he held dear in his hardened heart. One day we'll crush those pale-eyed bastards. It won't be easy and it won't be without but we can win. Together, we all shall bring fire and be upon the Otsutsuki clan and burn them all in the fury of mankind, promised Madara with so much conviction that it earned him grim nods from the two Senjus beside him. Madara glanced at the skies beyond which the vast universe, and somewhere out there was their eternal foe marching towards them. His words echoing his promise across the universe. One day, the final enemy of mankind shall fall. Explosions thundered all across the destroyed lands. A pale-eyed man with long white hair stepped out of his tent observing and smiling at the chaos around him. Towards the perimeter of their large settlement, the battle was being fiercely fought between his own forces and the enemy. He gazed far and wide with his pale eyes, only to be surprised by the new enemy before him. They were interesting, to say the least. But his gaze hardened when he saw them use attacks that screamed a mastery over chakra. A power which only belonged to his kind and not the vermin across the universe. The stupid bee Kaguya had betrayed them, but it was only going to be a minor nuisance in their eternal conquest. Still, it was going to be an interesting challenge in crushing creatures that not just looked similar to his own people, but also were able to mimic their powers at a pitiful level. As the battle raged on, he saw a blonde-haired warrior fiercely lead his small army, shockingly crushing the outermost guard force of the Otsutsuki with ease. On his lips was a simple battle cry that seemed to urge his forces to fight even harder and more fiercely. It also gave the Otsutsuki king a name to his enemy's home. Earth. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.